Part B, a hadith on dhikr. When the importance of dhikr has been emphasized in so many verses of the Quran, the number of hadith on the subject is naturally far too great. It is in proportion to the many large books of hadith that the Quran is one book of only 30 parts, but the books of hadith are many, and each book contains a large number of hadith. There were smaller books, like early on, those who knew except Ibn Abbas and Ali radiallahu anhuma, the collections were really pretty small. People tended to have a couple things written down because, of course, the emphasis was on Quran. But it is in proportion to the many large books of hadith. The Quran is one book of 30 parts, but the books of hadith are many each book. Oh, sorry, I already read that part. For example, the Sahih of Bukhari consists of about 30 voluminous parts, and similarly, the Sunan of Abu Dawood has 32 parts. Bukhari is a bigger collection, by the way. In modern times, you see Abu Dawood in about 3 volumes, and Bukhari in about 9. There is no book of a hadith which does not contain several hadith on the subject of dhikr, remembrance. It is therefore impossible to quote all such hadith in a small booklet. Of course, a single verse of the Quran or a hadith encourages the faithful to actions, but volumes of books would not move an unwilling person. Kamathalil hemara yahmilu asfara. Like a donkey carrying a load of books, Surah 62:5. Kamathalil hemara yahmilu asfara. Hadith 1. Allah's treatment is according to one's expectations. Abu Hurairah, God be pleased with him, narrated that the Apostle of God, divine contact upon him and wholeness, hath said, Almighty Allah, I treat my slave according to his expectations from me, and I am with him when he remembers me. If he remembers me in his heart, I remember him in my heart. If he remembers me in a gathering, I remember him at a better and nobler gathering. I love the light pinks. If he comes closer to me by one span, I go towards him a cubit's length. If he comes towards me by a cubit's length, I go towards him an arm's length. And if he walks towards me, I run to him. And this is narrated by Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nasai, Ibn Majah, Bayhaqi, and Hadith Abi Darud. Is there another narrator listed? But this is a Hadith Qudsi, and the laws of nature make us a slave to God, so that's part of what's being talked about, right? An Abi Hurayrata qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yaqulullahu ta'ala anna inda ranna abdi bi wa anna ma'ahu idha dhakarani fa in dhakarani fi nafsihi dhakartuhu fi nafsi wa in dhakarani fi mala'il kartuhu fi mala'i khairin minhum wa in taqarraba ilayya shibran taqarrabtu ilayhi taqarrabtu ilayhi dhira'an wa in taqarraba ilayya dhira'an taqarrabtum ilayhi ba'an an wa in atani yamshi atatuhu harwala. There are several points explained in this hadith. The first point is that Allah deals with the man according to his expectations from him. One should therefore always be hopeful of the mercy and kindness of Almighty Allah, and never lose hope of his blessing. Certainly we are extremely sinful and justly deserve punishment on account of our evil deeds, yet in no case should we lose hope of the mercy of Allah, as He may perhaps totally forgive us. إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء. Lo, God forgiveth not if a co-sharer be ascribed unto him, and forgiveth all save that to whom he will. Remember, we're using the gender-neutral plural. We're not using the plural here, but we're using the gender-neutral. So the Surah 4, 48, 116. Surah 4, 48, 116. But Almighty Allah may or may not forgive. That is why the ulama say that true belief lies in between hope of forgiveness of Allah and fear of His anger. The Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam once visited a young Sahabi who was breathing his last and asked him how he was feeling. He replied, "O Rasul of Allah, I'm hoping of the rahmah of Allah, and yet I'm afraid of my sins." Thereupon the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the heart of the believer is filled with these two feelings of hope and fear, Almighty Allah fulfills his hope and saves him from what he is afraid of. It is mentioned in one hadith that if the believer thinks of his sin as if he is sitting under a huge rock and that is threatening to fall on him, while for a sinful person his sin is no more than a fly which is easily scared off, and if he takes his sins very lightly. In short, one should be appropriately afraid of one's sins and at the same time remain hopeful of Allah's mercy. Mu'adh radiallahu anhu died of the plague, and on his deathbed he fainted many times. Whenever he regained consciousness for a moment, he would say, "O Allah, thou knowest that I love thee by the honor and glory, thou knowest this very well." Just before breathing his last, he said, "O death, you are a welcome guest, but have come at a time when there is nothing in the house to eat." Then he said, "O Allah, thou knowest very well that I always feared thee, and today I die hopeful of thy forgiveness. O Allah, I enjoyed life, not in digging canals and planting gardens, but in remaining thirsty in the hot weather and undergoing hardships for the sake of Islam, and in taking part in the gatherings engaged in dhikr under the supervision of the ulama." Some ulama have written that the fulfillment of the expectations promised by Almighty Allah in the aforesaid ahadith is in the most general sense. Those of knowledge passing on and verifying that their knowledge is passed on. It carries the assurance not only in respect of forgiveness, but in respect of prayers, health, wealth, and safety. For instance, when a person prays to Allah and sincerely believes that Allah shall accept his prayer, then his prayer is actually accepted. But if he has doubts that his prayer would not be accepted, it is not accepted. Thus, this is what some scholars say. This, we learn the smallest amount of good, smallest amount of evil, as the Quran says, is witnessed. Thus, in another hadith, it is stated that the prayer of a person is granted so long as he does not say that his prayer is not accepted. Well, if you deny the value of doing what you should have done, that's an act of disbelief, right? The same is true In the case of all blessing related to health, prosperity, etc., according to one hadith, if a starving person discloses his hunger to everyone, he is not relieved of his poverty, but if he makes submission to gracious Allah, his condition may soon change for the better. However, hoping for the better from Almighty Allah is one thing, and being overconfident of His help and forgiveness is another thing. Almighty Allah has warned us against such an attitude in several verses of the Quran. وَلَا يَغُرَّنَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورُ. Let not the deceiver mislead you in regard to God. Surah 31, ayat 33. No one should be misled by Shaitan to commit sins, just because Allah is the most merciful and the forgiver. There is another verse. Hath he knowledge of the unseen, or hath he made a pact with beneficent? No, never. Surah 19, 78 and 79.